Mediabyte Podcast Network.
Jason, Mother is talking to you.
I want to play a game.
Don't fall asleep.
Just been informed that zombies have entered the building.
You opened it. We came.
The unburied dead are coming back to life.
Hello everybody and welcome to the first real episode of the Slash It podcast. So today is a very, very interesting, I really like this movie. If you've never seen this movie, please pause this if you can. If you can't, it's fine. But pause it, go watch the movie, come back, and listen to this episode. So today's podcast, I guess is a better term, is Final Destination, which most of you probably knew that already from the name of this podcast, the episode. But today I wanted to talk about this because I think there is something really unique about this film, the way the movie came out, some kind of weird close things that happened in it that would not have happened given 2 years later. We'll talk about that in a minute. But if you've never been here, this is kind of a prequel, sequel, new reintegration of the Slash It podcast. So these first few episodes are me scraping off the rust, getting back into talking about these kind of films like this. So basically what we're going to be doing is I'm going to be kind of talking about the films. I'm going to be introducing it to you if you've never heard of it, kind of some of the very basic thoughts, feelings, like basic information about the film, and then we're going into more of the personal stuff and my personal feelings about the film. So without much further ado, let's just get into this video. So March 17th of 2000 is when Final Destination released into theaters. So it had a budget of $23 million and it made back $112.9 million. So which is almost like 5 times its budget? Math somewhere in there. I don't know if that budget number is counting like promotional things and things like that, but I do know that it is counting, what the movie was made for. So at least 5 times that. It's probably closer to double its money, given the way most commercials and promotional things happen. But anyways, besides that, this movie was directed by James Wong, who did The Boys Next Door in 1985. He was the writer for that movie. And then the next movie he did was Final Destination, Willard, Final Destination 3, and Black Christmas. He also did Dragon Ball Evolution. Some of them he was just the writer, some of them he was just the director. He wrote on a lot of television. He did 21 Jump Street, he did Millennium, he did American Horror Story, some of those. He did Rosemary's Baby, the TV show there. So something else, we will be talking about this, but he did the X-Files, a lot on the X-Files. I will get there, but he was a director-writer on both the original series, 93 to 1997, roughly, and then he also helped on the newer seasons. So we'll talk about that in a second, but so here's why I wanted to wait a minute before we talked about the X-Files, because this was actually written, so the whole idea of Final Destination, which again I'm about to get into, so if you don't know, skip it. The whole idea of somebody coming, like a premonition, and someone being able to understand death and like realizing what death was, actually came from a spec script that he had written for an episode of the X-Files that then either got rejected or somebody else said, hey, turn this into a movie, something like that. I don't know exactly the details. But basically, he wrote it for the X-Files. I think it got turned down, if my memory serves me correctly, and then it turned into a Final Destination film, which is pretty cool in my opinion. Like he turned his script into the Final Destination, which I think is very interesting, considering the way that a lot of scripts you write a spec script for something else, like completely unrelated, and boom, pow, like now you've gotten nothing for your work. And because he was able to get this into a Final Destination film, it also helped him like make a lot of money first off, and also make a pretty successful franchise. Frankly, I mean, there's a new one coming out at the time of recording this. Not at the time you're listening to this in 20 years, but yeah, it's really, really interesting, and I think you have to kind of look at this movie for the time it came out, the way it did the premonitions, the way... Okay, let's actually talk about that in a second. So let's get into something I think is pretty interesting. So I was born in 2003, so let's just keep that in mind. I am 22 years old at the time of recording this. The first time I saw this Final Destination, first time I saw this film, I could not tell you the first time I saw this movie. It has been in my understanding of film since, like, horror movies specifically, since as long as I can remember, to be honest with you. I can't really tell you a time that I didn't know about the Final Destination film. So let's just kind of jump into that for a second, because I know a lot of people who are older than me, they remember this movie in theaters, and they remember these movies as what they are, right? I never saw one of these movies in theaters. I will eventually, in 13 days from the day of recording this, that, you know, when Final Destination Bloodlines comes out in theaters, I will have seen it by then. But otherwise, there is no, like, I've never seen one of these movies in theaters, but I still hold this franchise to be up there. In some cases, it's one of the higher ones for me, not in terms of overall horror, but in terms of this kind of film that Final Destination is. But I honestly don't remember no horror movies without Final Destination in it, which I think is very different than a lot of people's connection to Final Destination. A lot of people who are just even a few years older than me have seen a few movies in the theaters, which I never have, and I will soon. I kind of have the similar experience with Halloween, but we'll talk about that because I did see those movies in theaters, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. So let's move on to the plot of the film. If you have no idea what this movie is about and you're very confused at anything I've been saying for the last few minutes, this is the part where if you don't want to know anything about it, skip ahead a few minutes till you hear me stop talking about the plot, or you can pause it, come back, and, you know, go watch the movie, come back, and we'll continue on. So the plot of the film opens up with a guy named, I think his name is Alex Browning. He is about to leave onto a plane to go to Paris on like a student vacation type deal. And basically, the whole film revolves around him. He's the main character. Alex Browning is the main character of the films. He goes on this airplane that's headed to Paris. It's like a museum trip that all the students are going on, right? You know, pretty typical. But all of a sudden, things start, you know, his buddy asks him to move. People start talking to him. He notices little things are going wrong. And we watch as the entire plane explodes. And it blows up, and then suddenly we're back in the eyes of Alex Browning before the plane blew up. That's because he had a premonition of the plane blowing up. He then freaks out because he starts noticing things are actually happening. Like, the major one is like the screw that he moved to a different seat. The screw to the chair table, that's like the chair that's usually in front of you on an airplane. The table has a table. The table falls down. This table didn't have the latch, so it wouldn't lay down. And that was his biggest, like, oh my god, this is actually, like, happening to me moment, which I think is really, really kind of interesting. So that happens, and then he starts freaking out. A bunch of people leave the airplane with him, and then the plane blows up as they're sitting in the terminal, which, as again, is very, 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 very fascinating, and something I don't know, I've never seen a movie that treated death and treated everything this way, which I think is why it's so well done. So then, basically, from then on, Death has a plan. The plan is put in place. And when the plan is put in place, and you like ignore the plan, you get your way self out of the plan of what's going to happen, death still wants you to die. And so basically what happens is the people who died all die in the order that they would have died if they were still on the plane, if that makes any sense. So the people who died on the plane are still on the plane. They're not still on the plane. They all die in the order that they died on the plane. And so now that they're off the plane, they have to figure out how to get themselves to a successful ending without dying by, cheating death's plan. And they do this in a multitude of ways. Some of them try to hunker up. Some of them don't even believe any of it's real and just kind of throw their hands up in the air and say, nah, that's not going to happen to me. And those people, of course, don't end up always alive. But Alex Browning, towards the middle to the end of the movie, ends up like bunkering himself down in a cabin, which is very, very fascinating to me. I like the whole way that he specifically talks and treats about death, because basically the other main kind of beeline through the whole film is everyone thinks that Alex Browning is responsible for all of these deaths because he keeps having premonitions of all the way all of his schoolmates are gonna die. And so he runs to their house and then they die, and then he is always there at all the deaths of all of these people, right? Which of course is gonna make the FBI and the government and the cops go, oh my god, this person is absolutely doing something crazy, which is interesting. But so the movie ends. They have managed. There's 3 people left at the end of the movie. Crystal Rivers, I think is her name. Crystal Rivers. Crystal Water. I don't know. It's one of the two. I think it's Crystal Water. I was actually wrong. Her name is Clear Rivers. There's a little bit that they do in the film that her looks like her name is Crystal Waters, which it's a little play on words there. But so basically, she is kind of like the secondary main character, or like kind of co-main characters in both the first and the second Final Destination. I don't know what the term would be, but she's kind of like the main other person. I believe she's the last person to die in the whole, the last survivor of Flight 180 to die, but I don't remember which film she dies. I don't know, maybe Final Destination 5? Maybe, that's when you realize that she dies, because I actually don't think they really mention it very much that she dies, other than you can assume, I guess, I don't know. But, so let's just kind of go through some of the kills, because this is what we're talking about when we talk about Final Destination. The biggest thing that people don't ever talk about are the kills, especially specifically the first movie. So when they talk about all of it, especially in Final Destination 2, which is we'll get there, but I'm specifically talking about the first Final Destination and not the second one. And these kills, I don't think anybody ever really talks about as being interesting or well designed. This is where I like Final Destination, because I think Final Destination at this point in these movies are so well designed and clear, where I think 2 to 5 they kind of turn into more of the Saw, where things are just kind of happening. Getting to see the way that death moves in the first Final Destination is really, really interesting. Somebody is strangled to death by a clothesline. It wraps around his neck, and he fell onto it in the bathtub. It's so well designed. You see everything. It's really, really cool. One guy who suddenly ran over by a bus, which again, it's interesting and just kind of cool that the way it all really works out. Somebody was stabbed by an exploding computer glass, and then a knife fell off the kitchen and then fell onto the knife. The knife fell onto her. Yeah. And the very, very end is not the part that I like about this movie, but we're not even really going to talk about that right yet. But there's just so many kills in this movie that I think are really interesting, and the way, specifically the build-up to a lot of the kills, are what I find personally the most interesting. Which, I know that's a tough word for a lot of people, but it's very interesting the way that death, you see the death, it's much more like death is a invisible killer, whereas an invisible serial killer like Michael Myers in the first film, 2, 3, 4, and 5, it's more of a force and like a spirit than anything else when it comes to the way specifically the way that death is shown in the film is so different, which again is interesting. So the ending of the film, let's just jump into that now. So the ending of this film is actually, again, kind of interesting the way it's done. I don't like it, but it's interesting. Okay, so 3 of them. I think I don't like them. I don't want to say that. My opinion on it is very gray. I'll say that. So the ending of the first film is all 3 of them managed to go to Paris. And so, okay, I actually got to go back for a second. The biggest side set of this is they all think that if they save somebody from dying, then they can, like again, they can be moved off the list. The other guys Carter, who is like the 3rd main survivor other than Alex and Claire, he's like, talks about it. He's like, nobody really saved you, Alex. Like, you didn't die. Like, you weren't gonna die. You tried to save somebody else, because that's kind of what happens, right? And it's like, oh yeah, that's true. And so then, like, you notice all these things start happening, and Alex almost dies for a minute. Like, something almost hits him, he dies. He doesn't end up dying because he missed him, and this giant billboard sign like falls off and like cartoonishly almost like slams into him, and it cuts to black. I really don't know what I think about it. I think it's an interesting idea. I like the idea. I just wish it wasn't a cut to black, maybe a cut to the reaction and then to black. I don't know. But it works. It's fine. And it also is exactly, I mean, there's really no other proper, real way to end the movie, which, again, I mean, there's nothing else. What are you supposed to do? That's all you can really do, right? Like, you gotta end the movie one way or the other, and they did a pretty good job. So, that's the ending of the film, very specifically. So, here's the thing. I'm going to be giving this movie a rating, and this is not an official rating. I mean, it is the official rating at the time of recording this, but it is not an official rating that I think will always stay the same, okay? I do my ratings out of 7 on the Slasher channel and on the Media Bite channel. So 7, and I did this specifically for a reason. I know you can do this with 5, but 7 gives a lot more kind of variation, I think. So 1, 2, and 3, I didn't like the movie, right? 4, I think the movie is exactly down the middle. 5, 6, and 7, I would recommend the movie. So 3 can be an okay movie, and I might not love it, but it's an okay movie, right? 2 and 1, I wouldn't recommend you. 4, I would at least recommend it, and it's middle of the road, right? 5, 6, and 7, I really liked it. I liked it. I really liked it. I loved it, right? So with that being said, I would give this movie at least a 5.5, if not a 6. I really like the movie. There's certain things I don't love about it, but yeah, I think it's just interesting, and it's very well done. So 5.5 is about what I would rate this movie. That number may end up going down, it may end up going up, just depending on different things about the film. Yeah, and depending on what you've watched recently that you kind of are subconsciously comparing it to, correct? Yeah, so let me know what you guys thought about this. Actually, wait, I wanted to tell you one other thing, one little fact. So this came out March 17th of 2000. I mean, a plane blows up immediately 5 minutes into this movie. If this movie came out and was shot like a year later, and then the movie came out in like 2002, I don't think we would be getting this movie exactly the way it was, just because of what happened in America in 2001 involving planes. I don't think this movie would look the same, and it would be really interesting to watch that movie and see what's different about it, if it even got made in the first place. I don't know. That's a separate, kind of contextual reason, but it's really weird and interesting to think about what like what that movie would have looked like if the movie would have ever come out. Because I honestly don't think it would have probably come out. I think they would have just scrapped the whole idea, and that would have been it. But yeah, so thank you all for watching this kind of first new episode of the Slash It Horror podcast. Coming up next, probably will be Final Destination 2, which I like Final Destination 2, and we'll see how much I like it better in comparison to the first one. So, thank you all for listening. I hope you've enjoyed. These are fun for me. I hope that these come across the way that I want them to. This is me talking to you, because I never really had somebody who would want to listen to me talking about horror movies in this way. So, for you out there who are listening, who are, alone, they feel when you're talking about horror movies, I'm there. I got you. And yeah, so you can follow listen to all the podcasts on the Media Bite Podcast Network. And we do this podcast, Exploring Cinema, and the Media Bite Podcast, and Diary of an Indie Filmmaker, which is all about my short films and my, this stuff that I'm doing right now. So, thank you all for listening to all that. You can follow Media Bite Co., Media Bite Company on TikTok and Instagram. I think it's Media Bite Co. on TikTok, Media Bite Company on Instagram. Follow me, Jared Poynter, JaredPoynerr on Instagram. And, YouTube is Jared Poynter as well for all the slash hits, or for all the short films, I guess you should say. And as I have not said this in a while, I'm kind of excited to say it again. For the first time in a while, and definitely not the last, treat every day like it's Halloween.
Media Bite Podcast Network.